Hey everyone, my name is Brian Howard. I'm a Calgary realtor who has sold an average of a house a week since moving to this great city in 2003. And this is Calgary Living, Real Estate and Lifestyle. I'm interviewing Calgary's top performers as it relates to living and lifestyle in our great city. Thanks for tuning in. On today's podcast, I have Mike Stanfield. Mike's a fifth-generation manufacturer in Canada. His company, Starr Distilling, creates alcohol brands such as Summer Love. I first met Mike about 1985, the fall of 1985, when we played rugby on the Acadian Dykes for Acadia University. Mike was one of those great guys, a fast, sportive guy with super leadership skills. Later on, Mike traveled most of our great country and researched where he wanted to land. So in 2006, his almost pregnant wife and he chose Calgary. When Mike was done working in the headhunting business with no skills other than the desire to make something, touch something, and have it held in his hand, Mike launched Summer Love Vodka. I hope you enjoy this show as much as I enjoyed interviewing Mike. Well, we have my old friend Mike Stanfield on the line. Mike, thank you so much for joining us at Calgary Living, Real Estate and Lifestyle. You are my fifth interview, maybe my seventh interview, and really enjoying the show. Welcome to the episode, Mike. We are about to have a great conversation.
My absolute pleasure. I think this is a great initiative you got underway, so thumbs up, man.
Thanks so much, Mike. Mike, why don't you tell our listeners how we met?
Do we really want to get into that?
Well, not all the details, but...
All right. Well, Brian and I went to Acadia University and played rugby together. And boy, please don't judge us on that. I think we've both had a few concussions along the way in that sport. But down on the windy fields of Acadia University is where Brian and I first met. And we may not have had the best team in the world, but we sure had a good time. A lot of time in the Anvil pub down in Wolfville that we remember quite fondly. Hey?
Absolutely. And Mike, I remember you providing quite a lot of leadership to our team, you and Brad. What was Brad's last name?
Brad Clark.
Right. I was thinking it was
That's Brad Clark that you're thinking of. And he's a neat guy. Brad moved to New Zealand where he's been running he's the CEO of a couple of initiatives down there and probably a big All Blacks fan, I would think.
Did his interest and love for rugby take him to New Zealand?
Do you know, I don't know what prompted him to go down there. So I'm guessing. I'm guessing like a lot of us, when you leave university in your young 20s, you probably grabbed a backpack and ended up down there. If I remember, he's a pretty good looking guy, so he probably had women chasing him around or something. But I don't know for sure. Brad, if you're listening, maybe call Brian and you can give him the New Zealand update.
Absolutely. So Mike, maybe what I'd like just maybe start out with you is what most strikes you about living in Calgary?
So I may jump the gun on your questions, but I moved to Calgary in 2006. I had been here many times professionally. I've got family here, not unlike yourself. I came out west as a young man. And what I always and continue to love about Calgary is the energy, the optimism, the can-do spirit of people that they know they can dig in their heels and make a difference. I really admired that. I know it's taken a bit of a licking these days, but I know it's still there. And it's probably my first sort of point of recognition in Calgary.
And that's what I'm hearing over and over again about people. And what brought you here? You said in 2006. Was it the economy at the time, or family, or work?
It's kind of a combo. And it's so my wife and I took a year off and traveled around the world in just a year before we moved here. And I remember we got back, we were in BC at the time. We got back and sort of said, where do we go from here? Do we go back to Vancouver because we had lived there previously? Do we go to Calgary? Do we go to Toronto? What have you, right? We're literally having a glass of wine, kind of sorting out life. And Calgary won. And honestly, it was a good part economic in that, the business was just exploding at the time and there was opportunities galore. But relative to real estate, a lot of it had to do with real estate. We were just starting a family. Vancouver housing was already well out of control even then. At some point, we'll probably circle back and talk about Vancouver, because I would have never guessed that it was going to go on to where it is today. But so it was cost of housing and economic opportunity combined with I already knew, though I hadn't lived here, that heartbeat in Calgary was there, and that's always appealed to me for sure.
Interesting. I have never met your wife, I don't believe, have I? And where does she come from originally? And where do you come from originally? I'm thinking New Brunswick.
Not far off. I grew up in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia.
Right, I remember. I knew that.
If you're not a Nova Scotian, I usually say Halifax, just because people aren't necessarily certain where that is, but it's the other side of the harbor. My wife is from Hamilton, Ontario. Her name is Lee Stanfield, and so we're both Easterners of a sort, and we've both been out west our whole adult lives.
Neat. And so that sounds interesting. You've traveled the world, and then you came to Calgary. What month of 2006? I'm curious.
Yeah, no problem. I'll tell you, it's a pretty good story, especially on the real estate side.
Yes.
Can I jump ahead and tell the story? So
please, yes.
we had decided we're moving here. So my brother lives here, and his family, they live down in Lake Bonavista. So I came in and stayed with my brother. They weren't in Lake Bonavista at that time, but that's where they live today. But I stayed with them. And we knew we were moving here. So this was I'm going to say it was approximately early April. And I already had a job lined up that I was coming to work, and I was coming to work there on May the 1st. So my mission, I flew in for a weekend to buy a house. So I arrived, got off the plane, went to his house. Next day, I get out with the realtor that I was working with at that point in time. And I can't remember how I'd been introduced to Chris, but good guy, also a RE/MAX guy. And literally, Brian, there were 6 houses for sale in Calgary that day. I may have that wrong, but maybe it was just 6 in the south or 6 within the constraints of what we were looking for. But there were 6 houses for sale. So we found one that was to my liking, and this guy's like, Mike, like I got to tell you, like I'll use a good maritime expression. Shit or get off the pot here. Anyway, we put in an offer, it was accepted. I owned a home before I got back on the plane.
How much over list price, and was there any conditions that day in April?
There were. They
accepted it?
Yeah, they're pretty straightforward conditions. I think we had a home inspection, and I don't recall if we had conditional financing on it at the time. I don't really recall, but it was a pretty straightforward. There was really no challenges physically with the house. Whatever conditions may have been on it were satisfied quite easily. And so we owned a home. And so we took possession on that home June the 1st. And my wife and my now very young daughter came along to join me in Calgary, and we've been here ever since. So we've lived in a couple different homes along the way.
That's terrific. It was interesting to me to hear the sort of the month that you came to Calgary and bought that house with possession, June 1st, because I remember in 2006, May of 2006 in particular, when our real estate values were going up $1,000 a day in Calgary. And it was a giddy time.
It really was. I remember that vividly, and there's sweet and sour to all that, but I think everybody listening remembers 2006 and probably as far as up into 2008, late 2008, it kind of frosted over like that for a long time.
Yeah. Interesting. Very good. And so what is that? Well, I guess, so you told us a little bit about what you love most about Calgary, just I think kind of ending with the can-do positive attitude. What is it that you don't like about Calgary?
Well, winter goes on a little longer than I care for. I think to be fair, I remember in the Maritimes, really summer, and you remember, I think you're a PEI guy, but you remember summer really didn't start until like late June kind of thing. And it's about the same here. It's not much different, but yeah, the winter blues can get me down a little bit, but so there's that. Let's not beat on that one because anybody can come up with that one.
Did you realize, I actually just read it today in Richard White's blog, that apparently we have 333 days of sunshine per year in Calgary? Did you know that?
I didn't know that specifically. You hear these sunshine figures from time to time, and that is really a plus. as a footnote, I lived in Vancouver for about 12 or 13 years, and it rains like the dickens there.
Mhm.
But sunshine-wise, I'd like to see the numbers between Halifax and Vancouver. I bet they're not much different. Halifax is a pretty gray place too. So
Yeah.
I know a lot of the true prairie folks don't care for Vancouver much because of that gray. I have to say it never really bugged me much. So I'm guessing Vancouver and Halifax are probably similar in sunshine.
Yeah.
But yeah, a nice sunny day. Nobody's ever complained about a nice day outdoors here, right?
Although
That's
it seems to me, since moving here in 2003, that we have less of those sunny days. It seems like the weather has changed. And I remember those sort of cold but dry winters that we had in, well, the mid 2000s, for example, that I don't think they're quite as cold and dry. And like there seems to be a little bit moisture. Have you noticed that sort of East Coast terrible, grizzly days? Like, I mean, they come in Calgary now.
I don't think I've got enough of a yardstick to measure it by, but I do remember that our first winter here, so 2006 going into 2007, it was so mild. Like that was a very gentle winter. And I remember my wife and I looking at each other once and saying, geez, this wasn't that bad. Like, I don't know what people are talking about. And I think the year after was just horrid. But there's certainly they all seem to take on a life of their own. I think my memory is probably we seem to have about 4 weeks of ungodly cold through the winter.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of it's not so bad, but those 4 weeks when you get into the windy and minus teens and minus 20s are, good Lord, good advertisement for Hawaii, I think.
Yes. Mike, I wanted to sort of reach out or to speak to you a little bit about, well, getting into what you're doing today. But before that, I'd like you to maybe talk to me a little bit about how the boom bust economy of Calgary like may or may not affect you. And also I'd like you to tie that in to some of your real estate decisions that you've made. And actually, I'm curious, I don't know for sure. We've had this discussion. I don't know if you're still in the same house as your first house in 2006 or not. Maybe you can weave in a little bit of a story here.
Yeah, you bet. I'm a rambler, so you know, if I get off topic, remind me. But first off, your question was the boom bust nature of Calgary. That's a frustrating thing to everybody. I mean, there's nobody on earth that doesn't impact, and I'm not alone in that. When I first came to Calgary, I was in the professional recruitment business. I worked for a group called David Applin Recruiting, which is a fantastic organization run by David Applin then, and his son Jeff has taken over in the interim. And that business is truly reflected in the boom bust. In the busy years, that place was just hopping and optimistic, and people were grateful. And when it slowed down, boy, it was the exact opposite of that. So I certainly felt that. You know, I remember the days in Calgary. I was shocked when I moved here. People go to lunch at 11:30 in the morning back in 2006, mostly because you couldn't get in anywhere. So it was like a competition to go 15 minutes earlier than everybody else. Obviously, you could contrast that today where it's the extreme opposite. An awful lot of restaurateurs and people that are there to entertain us have gone under in this very difficult last couple of years. So that I have felt the sting of that, as everybody has. Housing wise, so when we first moved here in 2006, I'll give you a bit of insight into this. My brother, who was a Suncor guy, commuted back and forth on train, and he said, "Geez, Mike, if you're going to work downtown, you want to go on the train. It's just the easiest way to get back and forth." So he said, "You want to live somewhere reasonably close to the train line." So Brian and I literally bought the first house, the closest house to the train that I could. It was about 300 yards from one of the train stations, and it was a fabulous way to get back and forth. So that was great. A couple of years later, my wife and I were sort of suffering what I will call a bit of suburban blues, and that pulled into your garage at night. Your life was kind of inside, and if you went out, it was just sort of a big box shopping strip type of thing. And you know, I can't put my finger on necessarily one thing, but Lee came home one day. This would have been late 2009, and said, "Hey, I looked at a new house today. Let's go look at it." And this was completely out of the blue. And so she brought me down, must have been, you know, probably the next day, I'm guessing, and we bought a house in the Beltline. So we live on 13th Avenue in the Beltline. not far from where the two old sandstone schools are. One of them is the CBE headquarters, and the other one's called Connaught School.
Nice.
So allegedly, we're the first family to buy a standalone single house in the Beltline in 35 years. I can't prove that, but I know that most of the standalone homes that are here are commercial, or zoned commercially. So, they might have a law firm or a financial firm or what have you in it. But we bought a single family home. It's a 1910 home. It's gorgeous, has stained glass throughout, the original wood, the original carvings. Squeaks like a demon when you walk up the stairs, that's for sure. But it's a beautiful place. And we've touched it up, done a little bit of renovation work, and it's been an absolutely fabulous place for us to live. So Beltline would get a check mark very high for the walkability score.
Of course.
And
yes.
so that's true. Like our second car, if it exploded tomorrow, we would never use it again. I don't even think we put 5,000 K on it last year. We walk everywhere. Lee works downtown. I host all of my meetings in the downtown area. The kids still both walk to school. It's been absolutely fantastic.
Wow. That is neat.
Now, hold on a sec. So to come full circle, so the house we bought in 2006, there were 6 houses left in the market.
Yeah.
We bought this house in December 2009, where it kind of felt like today out there. Like,
exactly. Yeah.
2019 has got, like, it's been longer. This whole recession and cutback has been longer and much more dreary. But I got to tell you, in 2009, that was the tail end of the financial crisis globally. Mm-hmm. And it ransacked the oil business here in Alberta. So 2009 was pretty sleepy, and there were countless homes. Like, it was, the home we bought, I think, had been on the market for the better part of a year at that point in time. So there was, it was the opposite of what we saw in 2006.
And did you, to purchase your Beltline home, did you have to sell your other home, your first home?
We did sell the home. I can't remember. I think we had some bridge financing for a month or two while I don't think it was conditional on it, but we were able to sell it quite easily. I think a lot to do, honestly, because of the location beside the train line. We were by, I think it's Fish Creek, Lacombe, sort of fit we're just on the south side of Fish Creek.
Nice.
And it was a very convenient type of house from a getting places on the train point of view. So it sold pretty easily.
Did you lose money on that house?
We did not. I don't think we made a heap of money either, but we were above water. We were above the tide line when we got out of there. I think honestly, it was just good timing. I think things really softened up the following spring, where, if I'm guessing, and I am, there's probably a lot more properties came on the market, and probably the supply and demand really got wacky that spring.
Interesting. And I'm pretending to be very knowledgeable about timing and stats and stuff. So my thoughts is, if you were able to sell your house sort of roughly maybe fall of 2009 or actually early 2010 down in south there and make money, you bought it just before things went really nuts in May of 2006 or June, July, and things just went up and up and up and up. So you were just like on the cusp of we're
kind of on either edge of a wave there.
Yeah, you're at the front end of that wave. Yeah, because in December 2005 is kind of, in my memory and recollection, is when it started to ramp up. When I was thinking as a realtor at the time, I was thinking about, like, how do I get into oil and gas? Like, I need to get into this real estate business.
Oh my God, everybody was, right? Like, God, who doesn't want 8 weeks of holiday and 1,000 layers of bonuses and all the rest? We were all pretty green with envy on the oil and gas crowd, for sure.
Yeah,
Brian, I got to share another story about this old house of ours, and as fate would have it, there was a golf course in that community. I think it was called Shaw Meadows or something like that. I can't remember 100%.
Maybe it's Shaughnessy. Is it Shaughnessy Meadows?
I may have been. I can't remember. Okay. However, the golf course failed as an entity. Whoever the company running it, the golf course failed. It was not a municipal golf course, so basically the land sat there, right, unused. Yeah. And a developer bought that land, and it became a very contentious issue because it was a zone to be parkland or whatever the zoning is for golf courses.
Right.
And the developer had to get it changed to develop the land, and it became an absolute war down in that area because the people that had bought to live on a golf course didn't want to not live on the golf course.
Right.
Subsequently, the citizens of that community lost that battle, and the property is currently under development. Anyway, we knew nothing about this at the time. And so I think we doubly dodged a bullet because the folks that live down there have had quite a battle over this development and live beside quite a sizable construction site at the same time too. So I say that because it's got some real estate intrigue. So
right.
I'll share that for you.
Let's actually contribute that, not because you're lucky, but because you're really smart, right, Mike?
Well, I'll take what I can get because I'm not really smart. But
I realize
a good story along the way for sure.
Oh, absolutely! It's I appreciate you sharing that. And part of my mission in this podcast is just share these sort of lifestyle and real estate stories. And sometimes we and as I interview people, everyone has a real estate story. And some people have been like extremely lucky, and some have been extremely unlucky. And we all try to put an angle on it, and especially that we were smart. We saw it all coming. Actually, and I'm curious about now getting into what you're doing now, and actually your work in the recruitment. Were you seeing working in recruitment? Well, what I feel like is in oil and gas, they may start to experience a slide or a drop or a slowdown. And then we in real estate see it probably a year later. So they're ahead of us in terms of a curve or what's happening. In terms of your profession in recruitment at the time, would you have seen, when are you affected? I guess probably a lot sooner than when we see we probably see a
okay. Let me talk through that in a couple ways because I don't know if there's a single answer, but Calgary certainly was attracting people from everywhere. During that time, right up till 2008, people were immigrating to Canada internationally. You probably know many people that fit this image that maybe the husband came from an international EPC type of environment. Mm-hmm. Engineering, procurement, construction, and probably were on some type of visa to work in Canada or a type of temporary permit or something like that, and then the family would follow. So a lot of people moved here internationally, a lot of very talented people, and certainly a lot of people moved from across Canada, or they're expat Canadians, maybe they're down in the States. So people were coming from every direction to Calgary. So there were a lot of really good candidates coming to the market at a time where the market was quite hungry for them. So there were certainly increased activity in just about any metric you could imagine in that time. Very curiously, I even read that people are still coming to Calgary, even in this downturn.
We're having, currently we have more in-migration than out-migration. I think I just read this morning, 2,000 people in the past maybe 12 months was in-migration.
Yeah, and weren't there like a year or two that was not the case? It was sort of net migration outward for.
Yes.
I don't know which years, but I think some of those years. But it's curious. We're obviously not. It's not a job-rich environment, but people continue to come here. So that's an interesting one. Back to your question, I don't know if that answers it. People are always searching for opportunities. Opportunities everywhere, right? They're just as there are people looking to here. A lot of people that are well employed here are often looking to move elsewhere, internationally, or if they're from other parts of Canada, depending on where they are in their life cycle, maybe they're looking to take a young family back to where they're from or something to that end. Yeah. So there's always movement in that market, but to be sure, the recruiting market is driven by. It's probably a similar dynamic in real estate. Who you work for as a recruiter, you're working for the company that has hired you to go find people. That necessitates knowing a lot of candidates and knowing specific niche pools of candidates and where they are. But it's really driven by open jobs or demand for people. So that has obviously. I remember vividly the company I worked for in September 2008, we had our highest revenue of all time for recruiting fees. In October, it was our lowest. And I think for the next 6 months, it was really really horrible. I'm guessing, Brian, but I think the price of oil went that summer to about $150.
Right.
And then I think come October, it was well on its way down. And I think in January bottomed out around $20 or $30. So,
Yeah.
I mean, this was the economy having a heart attack, right? Like this was severe and sudden. And it literally went from one extreme to the other overnight. And the recruiting business can be like that. And there's been a number of those sort of, to use my same analogy, if it was a heart monitor in a hospital, there's been a lot of blips, in the last 10 or 11 years has been a very blippy kind of environment in Calgary, right? 2 good years and a bad one, another good one, another bad one, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Very clearly the last 2 in particular, I'm not in that business any longer, but I talk to my colleagues that are still in that business, and really, it's night and day.
Let's get into the more interesting work of Mike Stanfield today. Mike, we met. I want to say it was like 4 months ago, but it could have been 4 years or 3 a while ago when you were starting up in the distillery business. Let us take us. When did that start, and how's it going, and what is it that you're doing today?
Yes, I joke around a little bit. What's a good maritime boy with no skills to do? Go out and start making booze. That's the right thing to do. Anyway, I jest, but where that started is, and you and I see each other from time to time. I think we did see each other a couple months ago, but this is, believe it or not, we're 3.5 years into this that we've had our infused vodkas on the shelf. So the company is Starr Distilling. And we have a product called Summer Love Vodka, which is 3 fruit-infused flavors that are on the shelves in most stores in Calgary. And we've had a really fun run at this, and the business continues to grow sort of 50% plus a year, which is a very fun thing to say in context of what you and I were just talking about, of the lousy business environment here in the last a couple of years. So we really, and when I say we, it's really my wife and I are partners in this business, though it's really my quote unquote day job, if you will. Lee has broad shoulders and continues to earn a living while I invest all of our money in this venture.
Nice.
If she were standing beside me, I would probably get punched in the shoulder right about now, but we'll leave that one alone.
Right.
Anybody who runs their own business, you included, knows the ups and downs of entrepreneurship. Anyway, so we started this, and so the reason, so I was in the recruiting business for a long time, and this is very Calgary related. The up and down nature of it would drive people nuts, and I've always had an itch to kind of get into the making something tangible that you can hold in your hand, see it, touch it, in this case, taste it, etc. So I have a wonderful wife, and we were down in Disneyland in 2014, 5 years ago. And I had taken a job within the recruiting firm that a year or 2 prior to that just wasn't really working out for me. It probably wasn't working out for the company either. And I just told her, I said, look, I'm so frustrated. I don't even want to get out of bed and go to this. I'm grumpy all the time. I'm miserable to our kids, and bad father, bad husband, bad employee, like all the way around.
Yeah.
And I think I reflexively said, I'd like to quit. And she just looked at me in the eyes and said, well, quit then. Like, do something. Like, don't just sit here and bellyache about it. If you're going to quit and move on. And she was very supportive of that. So I literally pulled the trigger on Canada Day of 2014. Mm-hmm. And I had a wonderful summer with the kids. We rented a little cottage out in BC on the Shuswap, and that was a lot of fun. So the booze thing, how did that get started? So, and I don't know if you know all this, Brian, but I'll tell you a little bit of background. But we have a family business called Starr Manufacturing that goes back to 1861. So I'm the 5th generation to use the Starr name in business. And so 1861, this was in Halifax, right up till 2015, my father, or it might have been 14, I forget, 14 or 15, he legally dissolved the business. It did not exist anymore. Plant had closed down around 2000, and he had pension and benefits obligations to the employee base. some of which were third and fourth generation employees. So he oversaw the pensions and benefits requirements that for the men and women that work there. And I think that finally got put to rest at about that time, and he dissolved the company. And on the day he dissolved the company, I bought it from him for $1. Actually, I sent him a US dollar in the mail, so $1.40. So, and he was like, "What are you talking about? Like, there's nothing to buy." I said, I want to buy the name. I want to buy the intellectual property. I want to buy the history, the stories, and I just want to buy this thing. Like, I want it. So I bought that from him. And so from that was born Starr, my version of Starr. So I'm the fifth generation to take on the Starr name and manufacture in Canada. Obviously, the venture with distilling is different than what they did on the East Coast, where they did some really cool stuff. Like, they actually made hockey skates for 80 years. Like, all the early NHL was Starr hockey skates. Of course, being a manufacturing plant in a naval harbor city during World War I and World War II, you go on a war footing and you make what the Navy asks you. So there were secretive things that they made in the plant for those two wars. The Second World War was all women working there. My grandfather and father's generation, it was much more industrial components, trains, bridges, and heavy foundry components, that type of thing, spikes, bolts, specialty nuts and bolts, that type of thing for large scale construction. Think railways, wharves, buildings, etc. So building infrastructure across the country. And then to my day. So we sat down and started Starr out here. And it was at that same time that, the Alberta government changed some legislation. And it's the same legislation that has prompted the boom in craft brewing. It's the same legislation that governs distilling of spirits or the making of beer, or for that matter, wine or mead, or, any of the, ciders, any of the wonderful things that are popping up in every neighborhood in the city. So we started down that road, and here we are 3.5 years later. We're probably on about 200 shelves across Calgary or across Alberta. We've been, I will be modest about it, we've been very successful. I think 3 times our products have been named the best flavored vodkas in Alberta. Wow. And Albertans should pat themselves on the back. We have we probably have the most outstanding regulatory framework for the spirits business in North America. So it's a really good place to start a brewery, a distillery, cider plant, what have you. Like, we really have we have the only competitive one in Canada by a mile. The rest of them are crown corporations that have more protection built around them than Fort Knox. It's absurd. Not unlike a lot of other things we Albertans might complain about, seem to have absurd regulatory issues around them. But I'll steer clear of that one. Right. So here we are. We're a few years in, and my update is I am on the cusp of pulling the trigger to start our project to build a distillery here in Calgary, or I should say, lease a building and build it out that way. We wouldn't be building from scratch. So we outsource our production today to the only place I could find in 2015 that would take us on as a client, because we just don't make much, and it's down in Wisconsin. Oh, really? So that's been really, really beneficial for us. But we're looking to join the local movement and dig our heels in here and make it a go. Wow! So stay tuned. We'll have to talk maybe this time next year, and I'll give you an update.
Well, part 2. I'm looking forward to it already.
Yeah.
And so that's, I remember, I haven't been following terribly closely on the sort of how you're marketing, but I remember you were having a lot of fun with the sort of the marketing of your, it's called Summer Love, right? Summer Love Vodka.
Yeah, it is.
And,
it's been a lot of fun. We do a lot of the large scale events that I bet a lot of your listeners have been to, whether it's the Co-op's Grape Escape Show or the Rocky Mountain Wine and Food Show, those kinds of things that are a lot of fun to attend. Taste of Calgary is an outdoor foodie experience kind of down by the Riverfront Y, downtown Calgary. Lots of tastings in stores and restaurants and that kind of thing. But it's a lot of fun. But I got to tell you, if you want the recipe of making friends, start giving away booze. Like, I didn't invent that recipe, but I tell you, it works pretty well.
Oh, that's great. Awesome. Mike, most recently, I mean, just in the past week or so, you sent me an invite to attend, what seemed like a social, like really an event promoting sustainable or interesting entrepreneurs or interesting entrepreneurship opportunities. Have you been in the past, since starting up Summer Love, have you been involved very much in the entrepreneurial community of Calgary? And I don't know, that vibe.
Yeah.
Share a little bit with me on that. I really know nothing about sort of. I sense there's a really
Honestly,
nice.
Brian, I didn't either, and I learn more all the time. I have met a lot of entrepreneurs in Calgary, both in the beer and spirits and cider business, as well as every other business under the sun. Small business is a major driver of that optimism and energy that I speak about in the city. Oil and gas certainly brings a lot of money into our economy, and I think years ago it used to be a little bit more entrepreneurial. Today it strikes me that it's more driven by these enormous companies that don't fluctuate quite as much. Like Suncor's fortunes go up and down, but they don't disappear. Same with CNRL and the others. They've bought out a lot of the international guys. I'm going down a tangent. Stop it, Mike. Yeah, I've met a lot of people like that, and I have to confess, I didn't have as strong of an understanding about the local movement when we began the business 4-ish years ago. I say 4-ish because took a long time to figure out how to get to market, and how to do all this. So we've been in the market for 3.5 years, but it was a good 18 months before that of head scratching and, to be fair, probably what I would call overthinking it. I was way overthinking it. But the further you get into this stuff, the more you see a really important shift happening for everybody in our society. But the younger you are, the more prevalent that shift. It's not just environmental or sensitivity to environment. It's, you get into understanding how your food ingredients were grown, how they get to Calgary. There's just a lot more sensitivity to all those supply chain types of things around the food industry that for you and I at that age didn't exist, or there certainly weren't as prevalent, but it's very prevalent. And it gives me an enormous amount of pride to have a business that's helping out other small businesses in the city and buying goods and services from them, and being able to interact with your customers. It's really cool. For me personally, I get a lot of pride out of doing that, and I don't think we can have enough of that. I think we've got to support local. We've got to support other Canadian businesses. We've got to get on board with being an innovative nation of doing things, and not hoping that the answer is going to come from somewhere else, or not being afraid to try. And so there's as much fun as it is to be in this space and try harder. And in our case, start this initiative with putting a distillery in Calgary. I'm proud of that, but you get as much good faith back the other way from people looking for that in the community. I think it's probably an equal and opposite reaction to globalization in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I look at my dad's generation with this business, and they got absolutely crushed by first regionalization and then globalization. And,
Right.
I'm the first one. I'm a free marketer. I'm the first one to say you got to remain innovative and you have to do all those good things. And perhaps they stopped doing those things. But they got just crushed. And so the business doesn't exist there anymore.
Right.
And the 3 or 4 generations of people that were employed, all the good things that came out of that business, gone, right? Like, that's just gone. That's
Wow.
not returning there. And so I think particularly the younger generation are more in tune with how important that is. Even if they can't necessarily say it out loud, I think they just at a gut level understand that you've got to have a viable businesses in your community and your country to keep our lifestyle going and improving. Canada's got a lot to offer, but you can only really offer when you're in a position of strength. So I'm going to say that local initiative and that local movement, and it's very prevalent in the food and the coffee and restaurants and visible owners in Calgary, that's hugely important. And I'm proud to be moving in that direction with our initiative even more.
Mm-hmm. That's wonderful. And I think there's a real story there behind Starr Manufacturing from 1861 to sort of slowdown or shutdown in 2000. And then, the total shutdown. There's got to be an interesting story around like globalization and as you mention it. That's worth, maybe that's another podcast.
You know what? It might be. From a macro point of view,
Yeah.
I'll throw this out. So they were really part of what you would call the second industrial revolution, which brought steam and electricity into plants. And plants all over the world looked very similar to what their plant would have been. Theirs was a water-driven plant. So the electricity was produced from water in a turbine.
Mm-hmm.
And pretty simple from today's point of view. You know, you had a lot of belts and cogs and wheels turning, and that's what they built the business on. And that plant wouldn't have looked much different than any plant in New England or England itself, or across Europe, or into and anywhere else in the what we would call the developed world. So that was the second industrial revolution, and it kind of petered out around the turn of, when railroads got started. So sort of late 1800s, like let's say 1875 onwards.
Wow.
And since then, we've kind of globalized. It was slow, but the last half of it was pretty quick from maybe 1960 on. You know, the advent of Japanese manufacturing, and then obviously from the 70s on, the miracle that has been China. Our business in Halifax would be no different from tens of thousands of others, where those jobs disappeared overnight and they're in China today, or Vietnam, or wherever they are.
Wow.
And so now they call it the fourth industrial revolution, which is really integrating. You might use people can Google that on their own; they can figure it out. But the fourth industrial revolution is what's currently underway, and you can read about the fifth one if you're sort of a nerd and into where these directions are going. But it's interesting, and I didn't do this as a fool's errand. I did it because I think we can be competitive price wise. I think we have a niche in the market that's advantageous for us, not only to produce in Canada and sell in Canada, but to be able to sell internationally. Mm-hmm. I mean, we are in this to win. I'm really grateful that we have this opportunity to do that. My dad's generation, I don't think they had that many opportunities where he was, or certainly in retrospect, I guess you can go back and pull a rabbit out of a hat, but he didn't perceive that there was a lot of opportunity where he was. Yeah, I perceive there's loads of opportunity now.
Wow, fascinating. Mike, why or why not are you staying in Calgary?
We are staying in Calgary despite the winter. If my wife was here, she might vote otherwise. You know what? So we've got two kids. They're 11 and 14, two daughters that are knee deep in schools and friends and sports and activities and all the things they do. We're not disrupting that. The kids are here to go to school. We've started this business and intend to grow the business, so we're not going anywhere. We would, a friend of mine gave me some advice when I moved to Calgary. He said, Mike, it's a guy named Paul Warmanhoven. He lives on Vancouver Island today. He said, Mike, Calgary's a great place, but you need to leave for 2 weeks every winter, 2 separate trips minimum. You've got to get out of here and get to somewhere with sunshine and warmth to make it through. So good advice. Nice. And I think if my wife were here, she would say, we've rarely lived up to that, but that was pretty good advice. But no, we're staying. Good place to build a business and raise kids. And I still really like the energy and can-do spirit of Calgary. It's a compliment to everybody that hasn't been crushed out in the past decade with all the challenges we face, and here in the age of gross misinformation.
Yes. Mike, coming to a bit of a conclusion on our show today, what advice would you give your younger self?
Start selling booze early.
Have more fun. Give booze away. Make more friends.
That's a cheeky answer. I so much enjoy doing this. I really wish I had, but you can't go back and change what you did. Since your podcast is real estate oriented, maybe my advice would be to get in the game earlier. Good Lord, I lived in Whistler for a while. I lived in Vancouver for a while. I lived in Kelowna for a while. Like these are my in-laws live in the Okanagan, and seen what lakefront properties have done there over a generation. All of these communities I mentioned, the real estate market has been so buoyant, and it's crazy. Like, I mean, over a 25-year perspective, each of those communities would have been an absolute grand slam win from a real estate investment point of view. Mm-hmm. And Brian, I was oblivious to this. I I rented when I lived in Vancouver. I was a young guy in Whistler, so clearly wasn't buying anything then. But it wasn't even on my mind. So maybe advice to a younger self would have been, real estate. Like there's seems to be two ways on earth to succeed financially, and I don't for a second think there aren't other ways or other aspects of life that aren't just as important, family and health and whatnot. But real estate and running your own business are the two avenues that anybody that's been financially successful has probably come from one of those two venues. It's almost invariably one of those two. So I wish I had paid more attention. I didn't know diddly about real estate. I still really don't. But in retrospect, I should have paid more attention.
Nice. I think I hear a kitty cat.
Yes, that's my cat saying hello. Good Lord.
Thanks for tuning in. What's your cat's name?
Her name is Z, as in a zebra, but the kids couldn't pronounce that earlier in life, so they called her Dee-Doo. So she's called Dee-Doo. So she is a wonderful cat, but she's about 15 now and getting old. She meows all friggin' night long. It is the worst. If anybody has solutions, please let me know.
You can find Mike's contact information in the show notes. Mike, are you social? How can people reach out to you? What are the channels if people want to reach out more?
Great question. All of our social media for the business is at Summer Love Vodka. But surely if somebody just were to Google Starr Distilling or Summer Love Vodka, they will find us. All of our contact information is within there, so they'd find it pretty easily.
Mike, this has been fun. I really want to thank you for being a guest on our show. I'm sure our listeners are going to love this, and I think there's going to be a part 2.
Well, I've enjoyed this, so thank you for having me on as number 5 or whatever it is, and best of luck getting to 100. I'm probably like everybody else. I love listening to podcasts. Listen to that cat go. What a maniac.
Doo-doo.
I love listening to I listen to the podcast galore, and I'm particularly when I get in the car for an hour or two by myself, I love them. So well done, my man.
Yes. Well, thanks again, Mike. I'll look forward to sharing some Summer Love Vodka with you and following the journey as you distill locally.
Yeah, lots of fun. So we'll catch up again for sure, and really happy to be doing this and engaged in this these days, and sometimes too much fun.
That's great.
All right, Brian, we'll leave it at that, I guess, and I will talk to you later on. But best of luck.
Cheers. Thank you, Mike.
Okay, bye-bye.
So that just about wraps up today's podcast. I think I'll go get myself some Summer Love Vodka. Thanks, Mike, for all you do and bringing us another great spirit here in Alberta. If you have thoughts, questions, or suggestions on who should be on Calgary Living, Real Estate and Lifestyle, I'd love to hear from you. You can find me on social, Insta, at Calgary_living, or just Google me, Brian Howard. And of course, that's a funny spelling, Brian, Bryon. Thanks.